Hello, everybody.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I-
welcome back to Definitely a Podcast. I have with me
I'm
here,
definitely Joe,
yes,
and
definitely
this is
Joe.
definitely a podcast.
I like that intro.
I have my co-host Algo here, uh, the man behind the screen and actually in front of the screen.
Doing both at the same time.
I'm just a goose and
He is a
something else.
he is a goose that plays games.
I'm a goose that plays games.
A very dapper one too.
All right. And today I'm going to be talking about a game that is near and dear to my heart, a game that apparently people have taken issue with.
Hello, Abby.
Hello.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, infuriating. I'm talking about Bioshock Infinite. To preface this, there are many prefaces to this video, including I have only played about 2 hours of Bioshock 1. I've played 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds of Bioshock 2. And this is probably the most spoiler-heavy review I've ever done on this
Oh boy.
Twitch channel.
Well,
Where
because
are
I
we?
feel like, but yeah, I don't know, Twitch slash YouTube slash whatever. We are a channel of some variety.
Yes.
Like Bioshock Infinite it's a pretty story heavy game, right? Like it's kind of hard to talk about it without talking about
Right.
the story.
Exactly. I mean, because I guess you could sit down and talk about maybe games like New Vegas or the other games that I've done that I totally remember.
The New Vegas or other Fallout.
Yeah, other Fallout. I forgot. Without talking about the full story, whereas Bioshock Infinite is very incredibly on rails linear, for the most part, and there's always story that's happening. I guess I could talk about just the mechanics, but the mechanics are not what you come to the game for, unless you're a very strange person. I mean, I guess you could come to the game for mechanics, but you might be a bit disappointed with this game. And I feel like this is. I was telling Algo before the podcast that this is the game that I feel like I could mess up the most in trying to review, and not do it anywhere near enough justice. Like you could listen to my review and be like, that sounds kind of boring, but it's like very incredibly, insanely fun when you're actually playing it. At least in my opinion, and I hope I can portray that and get that across. In my review. So raise your hand if you like the Marvel television show Loki. I can't see your hands because I'm not watching the live stream, but I don't think you raised your hand.
Nope.
Yeah. And herein lies the problem. I don't think that you would enjoy Bioshock Infinite for the same reason that I enjoy Bioshock Infinite, because it's exactly the same reason that I like the Loki television show.
Really?
Really.
It's. I will say I probably don't like. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like Loki. So the premise I think is great, but that's about as far as my compliments for the show go.
You don't like the execution, then?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Well, okay. So is that how you spell waking? I'm gonna start talking about the game, and hopefully I can persuade you to maybe think about trying it in the future.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna get into this. So, Bioshock Infinite, if you've ever played Bioshock 1 or heard about it or anything, the intro is very similar. Like, almost like story point for story point. Like, okay, this is the same game like they're trying to make it seem very much the same. You wake up, or I mean, I guess you don't, like you're put in the shoes of the protagonist in a very strange situation. You are being rowed to through the ocean on a rowboat by these two mysterious figures, and it's like, what's going on? What's happening? Why are we in a rainstorm that's very like a thunderstorm? That's the word. And what's going on? Also, what's this picture that I'm looking at? And your character, which uncharacteristic for the Bioshock series, the protagonist actually speaks in this game. But I don't have a problem with that. But he's like, he looks at his picture that he has, and it's of this young woman, and he says to himself, bring us the girl, or wipe away your debt. And so he's dropped off at this lighthouse in the middle of nowhere that's not connected to land for some reason or anything.
Nice.
Like it's literally just like a single like rock that only has enough land for the lighthouse, and you're just like, okay, what's going on? And this is where you're given control of the character, and it's like, okay, go ahead. And you go up the lighthouse. It's you spend a little time if you want exploring it. There's not many rooms. There's like three levels that are just like normal like living room size, and there's a guy that's shot through the head in one of them.
Oh, nice.
It's like oh, that's cool. But you get to the top of the lighthouse, and you're given this sort of kind of not at all difficult puzzle of you go up to this thing that has these symbols on it, and your character immediately pulls up a card with the symbols and numbers under each, and you press interact that many times on each of the symbols, and this thing opens up, and it's like there's a seat in the middle of this room that opens, and you sit in the seat and are immediately like rocketed up into the sky, where you end up being like, oh, there's a floating city right above where we're at.
Surprise.
It's like, oh, okay. And if you've ever played Bioshock 1, it's very reminiscent of going to Rapture, the city under the sea. Instead of like getting ejected straight into the bottom of the ocean, you get ejected up into the sky. And it's like, holy crap, where are we? What's going on? And so that's all of the context that you're given at the start of the game. It's like a picture of a woman, bring us the girl to wipe away your debt. And now you're in the floating city. And, there's where you land in the city is like this weird religious temple place. And it has like these murals with, like paintings of this guy, and like these weird religious sayings like the prophet has brought us from the Sodom below and all this stuff, and then there's like a thing about a baby that was born, and like the lamb that shall guide us to Eden and all this stuff. And so you're learning about like this city and its history and its strange cult-like following that it has of the guy who founded the city. His name is the Prophet, Father Comstock, and so you have to get out of the temple to continue on your journey to find the girl, whoever she is. And the only way out is there's this ceremony of these people who are getting baptized, and you have to accept the baptism to get out, because otherwise they won't let you leave. And the priest is like, I see more sin on this guy than all the other people, so he like holds you down, and like you literally like black out, and then you end up just waking up on the opposite side of the door, being like, "What the heck?" She tried. Like the protagonist makes a comment, being like, "That priest should really learn how to not to drown people and all this stuff like that." And you wake up and you're like in this garden outside the temple, and they have statues of like 3 of the founding fathers. They have George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, and they're in these like weird angelic robes, and they there are people just standing there like Father Jefferson, give me guidance in my life and stuff like that. It's like okay, I guess America as a religion is what they're going for here.
What's your religion? America.
And so you just you're given a little time to walk around the garden if you want and talk to people about stuff, and all of these people in around this temple are wearing these robes as if they had just gotten that same baptism, and were they're seeking religious guidance and all this stuff. And then as you get to the end of the garden area, you realize that you're actually obviously you're in the floating city, but the temple and all of the other buildings in the city are just free floating, and so your temple area connects to a bridge that then connects to a city square on the other side. So these buildings that are floating around, someone makes a comment that the 9:15 walk across is scheduled for 2 minutes from now. So the buildings have a time schedule to them where they connect, and I would have really liked it if you wait a few minutes and it just deconnects and you're like, oh, I missed it, I gotta go do it.
Chance.
But yeah, it's really fun, interesting thing. The setting is supposed to be early 1900s, I think 1912, around there. So it's very quaint, and people have this interesting way of speaking that they have old-timey accents. And so it's supposed to have this really cool feeling to it, but also there are a lot of hints that all that glitters is not gold. Specifically, you're walking through and you're exploring. There's shops, and you can pick up these things called voxophones that are the audio files of the game, which are supposed to be actual you can it's a the heck are they called, a record that plays that can play by itself without any outside having to plug it in or anything. And some people were talking as you walk by about this movement called the Vox Populi, which, if you don't know your Latin, is Latin for the voice of the people, and how there's a whole most of the city isn't this grand, cool, well-kept place. It's very seedy and poor, and all of these minorities and immigrants are keeping the rest of the city together while they're struggling and having to do all this menial work. And so it's supposed to, there's supposed to be some allegory there, I guess.
Yeah. It's always an interesting, there's Final Fantasy XIV actually did a very similar has done actually a few very similar storylines, but they had in one of the recent expansions, there's a town that's literally it's filled with all of the the rich and the high class, and then they occasionally will come into the slums around the city and be hey, which one of you can do X or Y task? And if they can, then they get to come into the city, and then as soon as they're not able to do that task for whatever reason, they get thrown out and get kicked out forever, and sometimes just straight up killed. So
Jeez.
Yeah, the storyline there gets a whole lot more messed up, because it turns out they're actually eating people in there, so it gets weird. So I think that's probably where the similarities in the storylines end.
I mean, that idea of like, can you do this task? There's a much further into the game, like maybe 2/3 of the way through, you actually go to the underbelly of the city, and like there's this place you walk by where it's like, basically like, okay, we're gonna auction off a job for people to do, and it's like, how many minutes can you promise to do this job in? And it's like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and they're like fighting each other, like literally like pushing and shoving, like, I need this money, like it's yeah, there's interesting things about it.
Yeah.
And we will get back to that, the Vox Populi and all that in a little bit, but for now I want to talk about the celebration that's happening. This is like the very start of the game, like it's a very important part of this part. So you're like walking around, like, and then there's all these like parade events and like all this stuff. It's like, we're celebrating, I guess they call it the lamb, which was, so it's like this person's birthday that they're not really, it's like, it's a miraculous thing that the prophet had a daughter after being such an old coot, basically. They didn't have an heir to the leadership of the city for so long, and then it's like, oh wow, we actually have an heir. So like there's all these parade floats, there's like fair activities, and the fair that is happening for this event is where you learn a lot of the mechanics. Like there are little mini games. It's where vigors are introduced. Vigors are, if you've ever played Bioshock 1, it's just plasmids again. So it's like your alternate ability. Like some of them you can basically just like throw fire, or like influence people to your side, or stuff like that. Some interesting vigors at the end game, like you literally like summon a octopus tentacle, if I'm remembering correctly, and it'll just like throw people or whatever. It's like, okay, that was cool, but how did that happen? It's like, no, it doesn't make sense, but it happened. And there's a mini game called Cast Out the Devil, which basically you're given a vigor for a limited time, and you can use it to just like shoot this guy off the ground, and then if you do it enough times, you win some money. And there's also a mini game where you are given a gun and you have to shoot some little, like, it's like the duck game, you know, but like the ducks are like Vox Populi, like agents that are coming to sabotage whatever. It's like, oh no, the Vox have planted a bomb or whatever is happening. Apparently that, like, I mean, it's very on the nose, as if like they're like a terrorist organization or whatever. And then after you've had your fun at the fair, you're like, okay, it's time to actually go do the rest of the main quest. And so you go down this like thoroughfare, and you meet these people, the Lutesses, who sound very familiar because they're exactly the same two people who were rowing the boat that got you to the lighthouse. It's like, how did they get here? Who knows? But they ask you to flip a coin, and you flip a coin, and the one puts a tally on a chalkboard that says you got heads, and there's like 137 heads and 0 tails. And what does that mean? Who knows? I mean, I know, but I'm not going to explain it yet. And then, you get to these people who are like, are you going to join the raffle? And this kid shows up like right then, and he's like, "Here, mister, here's a note." It's like, "Who are you?" A note. Okay, he takes the note. It's like, "Whatever you do, don't take number 77." And then this woman immediately walks up and is like, "You want a free raffle ball?" Hands him number 77. You're like, "Well, shit." uh, and
I failed at the first thing.
So, because it's a video game, obviously you win the raffle, and so immediately what happens is the raffle is winning the raffle means that you get to throw the first baseball at an interracial couple that the entire town is going to stone to death with their baseballs that they got from the raffle.
Is that all?
Because this is that's all. That's an amazing. Okay, my cat's knocking stuff off.
Oh boy. Your cat didn't like the sound of of winning that raffle.
Stegosaurus. Okay. She's a good girl. Okay. And so yeah, it's a really fun thing. But you're given the choice to throw the ball or to abstain, and if you're a decent human being, you would abstain. Oh, you little girl, my Stegosaurus. Stego says she's sorry. Okay. So obviously, if you're a decent human being, you would abstain. You wouldn't decide to kill people because they married the wrong race. But it doesn't matter what your choice is, because someone sees your hand and sees that you have the letters A-D branded on your hand, and apparently, like, before the raffle, you had seen a poster that was like, "The false shepherd's here to get us. Someone with the brand AD on their hand is gonna come and try to steal the lamb," and obviously that's you, because you have AD on your hand, and so everyone starts panicking, and the cops come and try to take you away, and this is where combat is introduced into the game. And it's honestly a pretty cool little interaction animation thing. A cop grabs you by the shoulder. He's like, "You're coming with me, boy," and another comes from your right. You grab his Skyhook, which is a machine that like spins around in a circle, and you just like plunge his Skyhook into the other guy's head and just like absolutely demolish his face.
Nice.
And then you take it, and that's your melee weapon for the rest of the game. Skyhooks are a really cool thing because not only can you like spin them around and like jam people with them and like melee them, but they're also a form of transportation, because around the city there are skylines. Obviously, you need to get around from one building to the other, like transferring cargo. But the Skyhook is magnetized, and it'll let you like slide along it around the city. It's a mechanic that happens like every level in the game has some like Skyhooks to slide around on of some sort.
Nice.
To get a bit of verticality and also speed, from because most enemies won't follow you. They'll just be like, "Oh no, he got away." Dang it. And also, so you get your
the wind.
Oh no.
Must have been
What
my
happened?
imagination.
Yeah, that's why there are 3 dead bodies in front of you. Yeah. So you get your Skyhook, and you're like running around, like all these cops come in being like, "We have to stop the false shepherd. Oh no!" And they come and start shooting at you, and all you got's your Skyhook. So you just, as a protagonist of a video game would do, you just sprint headlong at them and you just melee them in the face, and then just long range weapon. So shooting in Bioshock Infinite is like decent, but not like good. It's definitely better than a game like Fallout 3 or New Vegas, but definitely not as good as like basically any game where the shooting is like supposed to be good. Like it's not Destiny level or anything like that. Like, wow, this is amazing. It's just like it's okay. Like maybe I wouldn't. No, I don't know what I was gonna say. Like maybe like Half-Life, but Half-Life is usually pretty good. It's not that good. So you have your melee weapon and your first like pistol, and you've already been given a vigor. Like before this, it'll turn machines to your side, so there are random turrets that are gonna just try to take you out, and you're just like, we'll do that. And then you're making your way. You're trying to get to like this like the place where the woman is that you're trying to find, and you meet your first mini boss. He's called the Fireman, and
The fireman.
The Fireman, and he wears a full get up like a firefighter, and then he throws fire out of his hands. As ironic as that is, it's like, yep, that's pretty fun. And most mini bosses in the game are very easy, especially on like any difficulty that's lower than the very, very hardest. It's like, oh, he throws fire. Oh no. Shoot. Okay, he's dead.
It turns out, even if he throws fire, bullets still kill.
Wow. And the interesting thing about this game, the death mechanics that exist, falling off ledges don't actually kill you. It just it plays a sound effect and instantly teleports you back. It's like a sound effect as if, oh, that didn't actually happen. Oh no. Like a whooshing sound or whatever.
Yeah.
But like dying for real, like what happens is you get some money taken away, and then you get spawned in this area that's it's like black and white, and it looks like an office, and then you go through the door, you open the door, you go through the door, and you're back where you were fighting those enemies again. The enemies you killed before you died stay dead, and that's it. Like, you lost some money, and then like you had this weird waking up animation. And you turn around and the door you came out of is just gone, like instantly, like before you even saw it was there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's the main game loop. Like, you get some vigors, you get some more weapons, you go on some skyhook places, and you go kill people. The main plot points in between are what really matters to me, because there's not like much progression to the actual like your character. You can go to vending machines and upgrade your skills with money, but besides that, it's very samey for most of the game. How your character interacts with the world. Like at the end of this section, like right before you get to what's called Monument Island, where you find the girl, you get your first upgrade, which upgrades give you either more health, more shield, which you start with 0 shield, or more salt. Salt is the thing that lets you use vigors more. And so if you want to play a vigors only run, you'd get like all of the salt upgrades before you did anything else. But that's a very interesting way to play that I've never actually tried it before, and maybe I should do that one day.
Yeah.
And at the end of this section, before you get to Monument Island, the cherry on the top of the cake of how terrible this place actually is, there's a statue of John Wilkes Booth. Like a giant statue celebrating the guy who murdered Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, it's a great place to live.
Honestly, I suppose that's just fitting considering what happened when you won the raffle. It seems like that would be kind of what they would support.
Yeah, in that same section of the game, before you get to Monument Island, you discover, I think it's through an audio log, that Columbia, the city that you're in, seceded from the United States because they wanted to reintroduce slavery. And so they successfully seceded. They just flew away, basically they're like, we're not attached to the ground, so we can just make our own country. Goodbye. And then and then they made all of the African Colombian servants back into slaves, as if they didn't. It was too difficult to just pay them the crappy cheap wages they were already paying them. Nice, that's really good.
We can't afford a single cent, otherwise how will we make all of these monuments?
Whoa. Okay, so after that, where am I? I've lost my place of it. So you get to Monument Island. It's a giant statue of an angel. I'm skipping a little bit between this because there's a few little things that aren't as important, and I might skip some stuff that I've already written down later. But you get there and it's a very creepy place, very strange. You get in and there are these these glass tubes basically that have artifacts of this woman's life. She's probably late teens. And they have things like her first teddy bear and weird, very creepily enough, her first menstrual rag. It's literally there, in a tube. Oh, that's cool. What the hell?
It's a very important collector's item.
And and they have the glass of them.
Uh-oh. Your mic's cutting out, Joe.
No. Am I back?
I think you're back now.
Okay. Okay. How much of that did you hear?
Pretty much right after you stopped talking about the rag.
Okay, there are levers in front of these glass tubes that you can pull, and when you pull them, they go from their current kind of worn used state.
Where'd you go? Joe has disappeared.
Oh?
Oh, hello. Apologies, folks. We appear to be having some technical difficulties.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Am I here?
Possibly. I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm here.
For
I'm scared.
now.
Take me. Okay. Okay. If it keeps happening, you do the episode, okay?
Oh, all right. Yeah, no problem. I think it's just the Vox Populi. They're coming in and trying to steal
I mean,
your voice.
I think they're, kind of a worthy cause. They just think that slave.
Uh-oh. Your mic cut out again.
Is it my internet or my microphone? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just your mic went. They think that's slay, and then it cut out. They think that's slay.
They just think that slavery's bad, I don't. Is it working? Are we here? Am I here?
Potentially.
Okay. Back on track? Probably not, but we'll try again.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, I'm just gonna go ahead. So um, we're in Monument Island. There's like it's like very creepy, and you go through a hallway and you end up like behind a two-way mirror, right? A one-way mirror, however many three-way mirror probably.
700 way.
And you find on the other side of the mirror in a room painting this woman Elizabeth whom you are ostensibly sent to rescue and bring to whoever it was that sent you. And so she's like stuck in like a chamber, and you're apparently they keep her like observed at all times, and so you're just like, oh, I have to get her out of here. And then she's painting, and she just does some motion with her hands, and a tear is what it's called in the game. A portal into another universe is opened up. It's like, oh, cool. Oh, that's all. And the portal that opens up is actually pretty interesting. It's Paris in 1980, showing Return of the Jedi in French. Just like it's like, oh, you're outside of a movie theater, and you wanna go through that portal to go see Star Wars Episode 6. No, because there's a fire engine about to come through the tear into the room, and she just like closes it. Like, holy crap, that was close. And she acts like nothing happened because she has done this a billion times before. But your character's like, oh wow, that's weird. So she goes into her next room, like her library, to go read, because she does that a lot because she's a prisoner and that's all she has. And you climb up a ladder, and you accidentally fall into her library, and she's like, whoa, who are you? What's going on? And you're like, I'm sent to rescue you. And you smash through a window or whatever. I think it's one of the two-way mirrors, and you're like, let's go. And she's like, I mean, I guess as long as you promise to take me to Paris. And you're like, sure, whatever, let's go.
Sounds good, I guess.
And while that happens, like she's escaping, and there's a giant mechanical bird who's tasked with keeping her in the tower for some reason. So the tower is getting demolished from the outside by the bird, and you're like, oh no, are we gonna make it? And of course you do, because it's a video game. And and so you're like, you end up riding along one of those Skyhook guys away from the giant bird as he's destroying the entire like line that you're riding on. And you fall out of the sky, and you end up in what seems to be the ocean, and you swim to the beach, and it ends up being a beach ocean combo that's built on another part of the floating city. They like just built a beach there, as if because why not? They got apparently all of the resources ever that you could possibly imagine for 1920s floating sky technology. So it's like, oh, we actually saved her, I guess, and she's never been outside of that tower because of her ability to go to other dimensions. So like, because they use technology to suppress her ability to do that. Because it's, I don't know, it doesn't make much sense, but it does make sense if you follow the entire storyline to the very end. because I mean, at this point, nobody knows what's going on except like, what's the debt? Who are we bringing her to? Why is she locked up? Nobody knows any of these answers yet. But it all comes together in the end, I think, and that's why I like this game.
Nice.
So she's like celebrating. She's like, I'm free. I want to go to Paris because I read about it in my books and I've seen it through my tears. It sounds really cool. Let's go. And you're the protagonist, whose name I don't think I've mentioned yet, but it's Booker, Mr. Booker DeWitt. He's like, sure, we'll do that. How do we do that? And she's like, well, the Father Comstock, the leader of this fair city, which is kind of a crappy city, he's got an airship, and if we hijack it to Paris, we can get to Paris. So that's the plan, the working plan, as it were. So they decide they're gonna do that, but to get there, they need another vigor to do some electrical thing, which I don't remember. I think it has to do with powering up some gondolas to get across this place, but they turned off the electricity there because they're like searching for Elizabeth, because she's kind of important, because she's going to be the heir to the throne of Columbia. And so they're just like they put it on high alert and everything, and so they got, it's like, okay, we need to get around this, the fact that they turned off the electricity and have separated parts of the city. So we're gonna go get this vigor that has to do with electricity, and to do that they have to go to a place, it's a museum of like the history of Columbia, and it's a very interesting place because it's where robot George Washington is introduced.
Oh,
He's
nice.
like 7 feet. He's like 7 feet tall, and he carries a Gatling gun.
That's how I always remember George Washington.
And this robot it shows up a lot. You fight him a lot. I don't know why they chose Washington of all people, but it's fun. I just take a sip there. Yum, yum, yum. And so this museum, right? I don't know about you, but I don't think the Boxer Rebellion or Wounded Knee massacre are points of history to celebrate very much. Maybe that's just me.
I totally
or maybe
know what
you
those
don't.
are.
So Wounded Knee in particular is the one that I know about, and it's like basically the U.S. soldiers were moving people forcibly, Native Americans, from one end of the country to the other, and the Native Americans were like, basically they just decided to protest. They were like, we're not doing this anymore, and so the U.S. soldiers, I think, just killed a bunch of them. A few U.S. soldiers died, but only after like dozens of Native Americans were killed before they could even like defend themselves or anything. That's in this museum. That's like a point of celebration for Columbian history. Father Comstock was said to have been a leading soldier in that battle. Like, good job on him, I guess.
Hooray, good for you.
And so you're going through the museum, and the entire time there's this guy named Slate who is talking on the over the intercoms of the museum, being like, don't you see Comstock is like evil? And we're like, yeah, we know, but like we need to get the vigor that you have. Can you just stop sending your guys to attack us and we could just talk? And he's like, no, for some reason, because never. And so at the end of the museum, you're in a room that's talking about the murder of the wife of the prophet, Father Comstock, Lady Comstock. She was ostensibly murdered by her servant Daisy Fitzroy, more of a slave actually. But later in the game, there are audio files that reveal that it probably was the Prophet who murdered Lady Comstock and blamed it on Daisy Fitzroy. But in the end, Daisy Fitzroy became the leader of the Vox Populi and said that, Father Comstock is a lying asshole and we need to overthrow everyone who's in charge of Columbia because they're like crushing the souls of like more than 90% of the people who actually live on Columbia to make the other 10% like have the best life they could possibly have, and that wasn't fair.
Seems like a pretty good deal.
Pretty good deal for all those Irish people and black people and immigrants, people who don't matter to society or something. What? Yeah. So you confront Slate. I don't know why he's supposed to be a bad guy, because it's like, hey dude, we sort of agreed with you. We just needed the vigor. But so you get the vigor. You can decide to kill him if you want to be an asshole about it. But like, otherwise you just leave him. Otherwise you just leave him like weeping on the ground, like wallowing in his own failure. That part of the game confused me a lot, because I feel like we could have been on his side, but it didn't. He just didn't want to be. But anyway, you get what you came here for. You go to the Zeppelin, the airship that you're trying to steal, and Booker sneakily is like, let's put in the coordinates for Paris. And Elizabeth's like, I spent like 20 years of my life reading books, and I know that is the way to New York City, not Paris. And he's like, oh no, you figured out that I am still, for some reason, about my thing of wiping away my debt. And she's shocked and horrified, and so she absolutely concusses him with a wrench.
Oh, nice. Just a little blunt force trauma.
Yep. So you, as the protagonist of the game, wake up captured, and you're like, oh, hello, where am I? And so the airship that you were flying got captured by the Vox Populi. And Elizabeth escaped while you were between cutscenes, and and so you're just Daisy Fitzroy, the leader of the Vox Populi, is like, yo dude, we can be on the same side. You can have your airship back, but you got to do something for me. And the thing you got to do for me is go talk to a guy named Chen Lin, a Chinese immigrant who sells black market weapons, and make him join the Vox Populi. And so you're like, sure, I guess. I guess I don't have any bargaining chips, so I guess I'll do that.
It's a sweet deal, considering he has nothing else to give.
I got 20 silver eagles, which is that is the name of the currency of the game, I guess.
Oh, nice.
So you go, you're like, you dropped off somewhere. I think it's called Fink Town. There's a guy named Fink who sort of like, he's the head of like most companies in Colombia. So he's like the guy who employs all the people who are trying to join the Vox Populi, like, because he treats them so horribly. And yeah, so you're thrown out of the airship, and you're like, okay, figure it out. Like, literally, they kick you out from 20 feet off the ground.
Oh, nice.
You break your ankles, and you're in hospital for 3 months.
It's a very long recovery process.
So then there's like this fight with a guy. I don't remember what they're called, but like essentially when people get horribly eviscerated while doing their terrible jobs, instead of letting them die, they take their bodies and fuse them with technology, and so they don't have any more free will or intelligence, but they're big and strong. And yeah, that's about it.
Nice.
Like you get no, there's no redeeming qualities of this new technology, but like, yeah, I guess when people die, we can still use their bodies.
This is
and
they're
so
just
you have
a town about recycling.
Exactly. So you're one of these big guys. He basically like runs around like an ape, like Knuckle Feet, you know. But he's sent to like stop you because everyone knows you captured, or I guess saved, or both. You did both of those things to Elizabeth.
Something
and
involving Elizabeth.
yes, and so you know you get your ass handed to you the first time you fight one. Like it's kind of inevitable where he just like punches you off the edge of the city, and you're like, oh no, I guess I'm gonna die. But Elizabeth is there, and she opens a tear, and an airship like gets, or like a, you know, a balloon or whatever gets spawned under you, and you're like, whew, I didn't die. And she's like, I don't trust you because you were trying to kidnap me, but you're my only hope for getting to Paris. And he's like, fine, I will not take you to Paris, or I will not take you to New York. I will take you to Paris. I will, you know, just avoid my debtors, you know, just run away to Paris with you. And as long as you help me get Chenlin on the Vox Populi side, and so we can get the airship back. So you go, you know, you're like, okay, we're gonna go do this. And so you go into the seedy underbelly of Colombia, and you see how terrible it is down there for the first time. Like there's a vending machine that some kids have knocked over so they could get any food at all, because it's just like piles of garbage and fire, and there's like one shop, and he's like a guy has to like stand in front of his own shop with a gun and be like, okay, you guys want to buy stuff? I have to go back in the back because I can't let you in because you're gonna rob me blind if you do, and all this crap like that. Like, I go, okay, this is a really cool place to be.
Yeah, I sure love it here.
So then, you know, you go, you figure out where Chenlin was. Like, oh, he got captured by some secret police organization for the higher ups of Colombia, and you go there, and there's like, it's a very like scary prison place. All these people pounding on their cell doors, like blood everywhere because people got beat to death in the halls and whatever. And you go to the interrogation room where Chenlin was, and his dead body is sitting in the chair, and it's like, oh, he got tortured literally to death. I don't think we're getting our airship today.
Yeah, probably not.
And then, you know, the Lutesses, the people I talked about before, who like the coin flipping people, and the people who rowboated you to the whatever, the lighthouse. Thank you. They just, you know, they like walk through the door as casually as ever, because they show up everywhere in this game, and it's really funny. But they're like, hey, you know, Elizabeth, you can manipulate universes. Look through this tear that we know about. And it's like, oh, Chenlin's not dead in that universe, so there's still a hope for us to do our mission. And we can jump through universes, but for some reason we're going to use it to still help the Vox Populi. And I don't understand this part of the story. Like, as if you can go to any universe you want, why can't you just go to a universe where the airship is just still sitting there?
Yeah,
but
that
anyway,
seems like that would be a little bit more convenient.
that is the major oversight of this storyline, and it does irk me quite a bit. But the rest of the story is interesting enough to keep my attention, and I thought it was funny and pretty interesting. And so you go through the tear, like literally she like pulls the tear as far as for the entire universe. Like she basically made two universes collide, because you go back out, like all of the people you killed while getting into the underbelly of the prison, they like come back to life and they remember that they were both dead and now are alive. And so it's like, what's going on? Like they're like stuck in a superposition of two universes at once. And so you go and talk to Chen Lin, and in this universe, like in the old universe, you had talked to his wife, who said, "Oh, he got captured by the police," and she was an older Chinese lady. And you go back and you talk to Chen Lin, and he's like, "Honey, come down here. We have guests." And a white woman comes in. So in this universe, he was married not to that old Chinese lady, but a white woman who had power enough to keep him out of prison, because she was connected to the people who were the police. And so it's like all this weird stuff is happening about like the different timelines of the different universes like colliding. And so after another hitch in like trying to get the weapons for the Vox Populi, they get through, I think the final universe is the one where Booker DeWitt, the main character, is already dead, and you remember that you're dead because you ended up going with Slate, the guy who you got the vigor from, who was in the museum. Like you ended up teaming up with him and burning down the museum and dying a martyr for the Vox Populi because you got the weapons. And then something about Elizabeth not being saved at the beginning of that storyline, but now she's here, and Booker's both dead and alive because he was a martyr. And so the Vox Populi see him. He's like, "Oh, you're our hero who died, and now you're here. What's going on?" It makes a lot of sense. And now, so the Vox Populi in the final universe you get to, at least in this part of the game, they are well armed, and they're causing a giant uprising because they are most of the population at this point, because more of the population are the terribly treated servants than are the upper class. So obviously if the servants push hard enough, the upper class has no way of defending themselves. So the city is in a terrible state. There's nobody in most of the streets. Like there are people, like there are refugees trying to get off the city, but most of the city's empty, and there's like giant like fires that are happening, because looting and riots and everything.
And truly
and then
a paradise.
Truly a paradise. So the only people you find are Vox Populi soldiers, or soldiers who still, for some reason, support the Comstock and his regime. So those are the only people that you see most of the time. Surprisingly, there are a lot of soldiers who are still loyal to Comstock, and those are the people you still have to fight. I think the Vox at this point are on your side. They recognize you as the martyr who is somehow alive, and they're
We're not gonna ask
very
questions. Just you're helping us.
all right. So you decide, okay, this Comstock has done so much to stop you from getting off the city, and so you're like, okay, we're just gonna stop. We're just gonna go kill him, stop him, whatever we have to do. But you can't get to Comstock House because it's very well guarded, and basically it's like, oh, it's locked. Dang. And like, for being 1912, they have handprint technology that's like the handprint technology recognizes Elizabeth as Lady Comstock for some reason, and Elizabeth has the idea. Like, oh, what if we go desecrate the corpse of Lady Comstock and cut off her hand and bring it and scan her hand to get inside Comstock House?
I have a great idea. Why don't we just steal someone's hand?
I mean, and at this point in the story, ostensibly her own mother, because she is supposedly the daughter of Comstock, who was kept prisoner because she had too powerful of powers. It's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll go do that. And you know what happens? Alex?
Oh boy.
Take a guess what happens.
Everything explodes. The
Almost.
universe collapses.
Almost. Apparently Comstock has technology to siphon Elizabeth's powers, because there's a trap in where Lady Comstock is laid to rest that siphons some of her powers to resurrect Lady Comstock as a powerful demon ghost lady. And then have a boss fight. It's the hardest boss fight in the whole game. I've died probably 100 times playing that. I know it's ridiculous how hard it is compared to the rest of the game. Most people die in 5 seconds, but everyone and she has powers to resurrect the soldiers that you kill, and then she's just floating around shooting lightning at you, and you're like, ow, that really hurt. Yeah, it's not fun. But
I just looked up on YouTube just to see Lady Comstock, and so many of these videos are best strategy to kill, here's how to insta kill. Looks like a lot of people had some trouble on this one. That
gives me a I don't know what it makes me feel better that I wasn't the only one who just kept dying for no reason. But basically the way the story handles it, okay, you fight her and then you didn't do enough damage, and then she goes to another place, and then you this area that you're interacting with at this point is multiple city blocks, and then so she goes to another place, and then you just have to basically hunt her down, find her and do it again. But the way the story handles it is basically showing that Elizabeth isn't actually Comstock's daughter in a way. So she was kidnapped from someone else. And so it's because basically Comstock, or Lady Comstock, thought that Comstock had an affair, and so she was a bitter woman for the rest of her life after Elizabeth was brought in, because she knew she didn't have a daughter, I wasn't pregnant. I didn't have a baby.
I forgot the 9 months that I was pregnant.
So she was bitter because she's oh, my husband cheated and just brought the baby in and got rid of the mistress. But she's this weird demon ghost who is Lady Comstock feels better about it because, oh, you weren't an illegitimate child, you were just kidnapped for some reason.
That's much better.
So she's more on your side now, so she'll let you into the she'll stop attacking you, basically.
Oh, nice.
But all is not well because Songbird, the giant mechanical bird, she grabs Elizabeth, and she's like, Booker, we're not going to win like this. This isn't going to be okay. So she's like, okay, fine, Songbird, I will let you take me to Comstock. And you as Booker are left alone, and you're like, oh no, this
and
is.
And then it says game over.
Yeah. Yep, you lost. Yeah. So this is the if you can believe it, most confusing, most like what the hell is going on part of the game, because you progress, like basically what happens is you end up getting put through a tear to 6 months after this, and you're like, oh no, I need to get to Elizabeth and save her, and there's these like weird creatures that are like protecting her, that like essentially it's like a stealth section of the game. Because like if you know like Pyramid Head, like him, like they're sort of like that guy.
Oh, okay,
in
yeah.
that like they're just like slow, like weird creatures that like, oh, I see you. Like they have like literally like a cone of light that gets shown on the ground, like in front of where they're actually looking. And I don't know why this is in the game, and it confuses the hell out of me, but it also feels like it really belongs in this game. So yeah, you get past like this section of the game, you're like, okay, that was weird, what was that? And you get like literally like pulled into another tear out of nowhere, and it's Elizabeth, but like an old woman, like 70 years later, and she's like, I know I did a bad thing, but I did a bad, please forgive me. I shall be. But she's like, I know I did a bad thing, but I was indoctrinated into Comstock's philosophy, his way of doing the world, like existing and being a leader. So she like literally just became Comstock again, and she shows you what she did. She's like in the process of nuking New York with the Columbia's firepower, and she's like, I know you can save who I am from Comstock. I know you have the ability to do that. So she knows that she is wrong, but she knows that she can't stop it herself. So she sends you back to like right after Songbird captures Elizabeth, like the old Elizabeth, like the young Elizabeth, not the old Elizabeth.
Now it's even more confusing.
Yes, and so you have your final fight. Like you save her, and then you're like, okay, now we have to take down Comstock, get the gang back together. Because old Elizabeth, like the old woman Elizabeth, tells you that you can control Songbird with a certain set of notes. Like literally, he listens to music and does a certain action because of the music. And so now you can have him on your side instead of Comstock being able to control him. And so you go to his floating fortress where he's taken refuge after you totally demolished his guards and took down his castle. And you're like, okay, let's do this. So you you fight to the center of the floating blimp guy place, and like there's all these guards on his side, and then there's Vox Populi. They're also attacking because they're, obviously they're mad about him, and so I think they're helping you. I can't remember if for some reasons they switched sides and now you're like some generic guy that they don't recognize, and so now they're attacking you again, or whatever is happening. But you finish this fight. I think there's like a random mini boss that adds some difficulty to it, and then you get to where Comstock is sitting. He's like at a water basin, and he's like, I wash my hands of these sins that you've committed, because he thinks he's still right. He's very incredibly self-righteous. Like he thinks that like oh, I'm cleansing the world of evil by
he is the chosen
raising
one.
He's like raising his daughter to nuke New York because he thinks everyone else besides Columbia is evil. And so you're having done all of this
to nuke New York. I swear, it's what it said.
It's what it's so he thinks you're the bad guy, and so um Elizabeth is like, okay, we've stopped you from doing your evil stuff. We can just have you face justice, like you know bring you before, like, actually have a trial or whatever, like form a new system of government on Columbia, because ostensibly she's the new heir to the throne of Columbia at this point, so she can be like the leader, and then have like fix what's wrong with Columbia. And Booker is like, no, I need to stop this now. So he literally he demolishes his face. Like he literally takes his head and smashes it into the side of the basin until he kills him.
Nice.
You know, as one does. And it's
Yes.
like, okay, I guess
That
that's the
works
end
too.
of the story. That was like in a traditional game, that would be the end of the story. You killed the main protagonist, or there's like some weird plot twist, like, oh, he was actually a puppet for like a shadow government or whatever,
Yeah.
and now you have to go fight them. The plot twist in this game, and it was a pretty big plot twist, is Booker DeWitt and uh, Father Comstock are the same person.
Oh.
So what ends up happening, right? We go back, like Elizabeth is able to go through a tear and show Booker what happened. And I'm not sure how anyone knows what happened, but Elizabeth is Booker DeWitt's daughter, and Father Comstock was not able to have children of his own because of the interdimensional technology that that his scientists who invented the flying city, they also invented interdimensional technology, and they were like, okay, let's use this technology for all this weird stuff, including uh, predicting the future. So he was, exposed to all this weird radiation and became sterile. So he needed to get an heir, and what better heir than his own children from a alternate dimension version of himself.
Mm.
Um, so when they took his daughter away, he was like, oh, I regret my decision. Give my daughter back. And so they're going through a portal. This is a thing that happens. Like, you go through a tear and it shows you this event, including him like rushing to the portal to like stop them from taking her to an alternate dimension forever. And like he's grabbing her through the portal, and her pinky finger gets like cut off in his own dimension.
Oh,
And so
geez.
she grows up with part of her physical body in one dimension and part of her physical body in another dimension, and that gives her interdimensional powers.
Oh.
now now does this make sense? Probably not. But
That
I thought
explains
it was
everything.
really I thought it was really cool,
It's a pretty neat twist, because it's like yeah, it doesn't truly like scientifically be able to explain everything, but like it at least makes it that it's not she's just some random person that randomly has powers. It's like, oh no, there's actually like a lot of things that kind of lead up to that.
Now, the people, the Lutesses that you've seen probably 3 dozen times by the end of the game, they are the scientists who invented interdimensional travel. Not They are two different scientists.
Oh,
That
they
like
had both.
they are called right. They are called the Lutess twins. One is a man and one is a woman. The woman invented interdimensional travel and stole herself, a man, from an alternate dimension to bring better, like they worked together, collaborated to make even better technology. um yeah, including the flying city that they invented. um yeah, so what ended up happening, the idea of Father Comstock being a high-ranking official in Wounded Knee, uh mostly crap, but Booker DeWitt, Father Comstock, was a soldier at Wounded Knee, and in one dimension, in one timeline, uh, Booker DeWitt was baptized at a river after those events because he regretted his decision to be a part of that, and like he thought it was a terrible thing that happened. And so in one dimension, he was baptized and became Zachary Hale Comstock. And after this, he has a religious transformation, including becoming very self-righteous and like becoming a crazy figurehead prophet. And in another dimension, he refuses. He at the last second decides, I'm not going to take the baptism because I find myself to be a vile, disgusting human being who killed a lot of innocent people. And so he learned from that and didn't become a self-righteous asshole, and instead lived a sort of not very eventful life, including but he did have a child named Anna, who was Elizabeth in the dimension that Zachary Hale Comstock was the leader of Columbia in. So I feel like, in a way, like the story of the game makes no sense, but also like the idea is that a single event, a single decision can create like spider webbing events of different alternate dimension universes, and the idea that they can interact after the fact is very fascinating to me. And I enjoyed that a lot. The very end of the game, and I don't know if I should spoil this.
Go ahead.
But I feel like I have to, because
at this point
I've
we've gotten far enough. If people didn't want spoilers, I think they've probably been listening to an hour and 15 minutes of straight spoilers. Hey Firelord, how's it going?
Hey Firelord, my buddy. The very end of the game is it's like, okay, they killed Comstock, but Elizabeth brings them to Rapture, basically. It's the where spoiler. It's where Bioshock 1 happens, and they talk about how Rapture and Columbia are the same city, the same basically work of idea, just
another dimensions version.
Right, exactly. And so the probably the coolest visual in the entire game is what happens next. It's where they go out of Columbia, and there's a bridge to the lighthouse that started the game. And as you walk toward the bridge, more lighthouses and more bridges like appear out of the ocean with different Elizabeths and different Bookers. Like all of them are like slightly different. Like some of them are wearing different clothing. Some of them are walking on slightly different architecturally significant bridges. Like oh, that one's got different whatever. Like the cobblestone is different. It's like, oh, there are like this exact storyline is happening a million times over with slight variation. And so the idea is to actually save Elizabeth, you have to kill Booker. Like you have to stop Booker from having the ability to make the decision to become Zachary Comstock. So what ends up happening is you go like they go to the riverside where Booker is baptized, and you as the player are in original Booker getting baptized in his eyes, and all of the Elizabeths, like dozens of them from different universes, come and collectively drown Booker in the river. Oh. And it fades to black, and it plays the same opening like little jingle tune that was played at the very beginning of the game. And then after the credits play, you wake up in that same office that you woke up in when you died every time, and you hear a baby crying in the other room, and the game ends. And that was a very poignant ending to me. Maybe it was incredibly cheesy and didn't make any sense at all, but I was blown away. I did not even could not imagine. Like, I was like, oh, there's alternate universes, you're going through different timelines, but I could not imagine that Zachary Hale Comstock is Booker DeWitt.
Yeah.
And that was cool. That was pretty cool.
It's very interesting because it seems like the story for this game is very much like a continuation of the butterfly effect. You know, I mean, it's like taking the butterfly effect but to the extreme, which for anyone who doesn't exactly know what the butterfly, it's a pretty common thing. It's just a small change at something as at one point can have massive like big changes. The reason why they call it the butterfly effect is because the example that's used is like a butterfly flapping its wings ends up leading to a series of cascading events that eventually leads to a hurricane hitting some town, and it's just because that butterfly flapping its wings caused the wind to change and everything. And so this game is kind of like that to the nth degree, where it's like, you know, this one small event that happened, or I shouldn't even say small, because it wasn't like it was a small thing, but like this one event that happened caused all of these other things to be happening. But not only did it just cause all these different things to happen in this one timeline, it caused it to happen in all of these timelines, because they suddenly, you know, they had developed this ability to transcend timelines, and so now it doesn't just that decision doesn't just affect the one timeline, it affects everything else. And so it's just like that one small decision launches everywhere, and it's a really cool sort of like direction, and a cool like thought experiment of like what would happen, how would the butterfly effect, like we already know butterfly effect is a really chaotic, really crazy thing, but how would that how much more would it get crazy, how much like harder would it be to keep track of if suddenly the ability to actually affect other timelines doing one event, like, you know, what would be the consequences of that. And this game is kind of like an example of that, of like the consequences of being able to affect other timelines.
Right. I mean, I talked about Loki at the beginning. I didn't really mention the storyline, but have you seen What If?
Most of it. I think I haven't seen like the last 2 or 3 episodes. That one's right. Another really good like butterfly effect type show.
Right. So my wife doesn't like that show very much.
Oh, really?
She says she's like, oh, it's weird seeing the characters doing other things besides what they were doing before.
Yeah.
Like having, I mean, I agree, Agent Carter being Captain America was very strange. But
yeah, it was a little jarring.
The episode that comes to mind when you mentioned that about it cascading across multiple timelines was the one with Ultron, and I don't know if you actually watched that.
Let's see. Let me check real quick, because I might not have. The one I was thinking was the Doctor Strange one, but
right.
Let's see.
So
yeah, same here, Fire Lord. I love multiverse stuff. It gets so crazy.
And that's why I liked Loki, is because it brought up the possibility at the end that it would be across multiple. And I'm very much looking forward to the new Doctor Strange movie that's coming out this year, because I feel like it's going to be, and I might be completely wrong, but it might be a kind of a capstone to this multiverse shenanigans, because it is called Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that. Because it's like, I love the idea of the oh yeah, so I didn't see the Ultron one, so I'll have to, I forgot that I never finished that show, so I'll have to do that. Like, I like the multiverse stuff. I think it gets chaotic, and it gets a little bit difficult, because as soon as you kind of open up that set of possibilities of that all of these different things can happen and those timelines can still exist, then it just like it becomes a lot to keep track of, and it makes it kind of gives that that sort of like nihilistic feeling of like nothing that's happening really matters. Because
Right.
there's all these different timelines where it doesn't happen, so
Right. I mean, so I don't know how much I should say that if you haven't seen the Ultron episode.
Oh, it's
But
fine.
it's
You can talk about it. I guess spoiler warning for anyone who still hasn't seen Marvel What If, specifically the Ultron episode.
right. So the idea in the Ultron episode is, what if Ultron won? So
Spoiler,
he
gee.
destroyed.
No, I'm sorry.
He just. Well, I mean, that's the name of the episode,
Yeah,
I guess.
no,
But
I'm just joking.
he killed, like, he destroyed humanity in that universe, you know.
Mm.
And the idea at the like in the episode is like, oh, he has the Mind Stone. He goes after the rest of the stones, and when he does, he's like, oh, there are other worlds that I need to help, and help in quotes. You know, his idea is to end violence on the earth, and he does by killing humanity.
By
So
ending
he
the
does
Earth.
this. Right. So he's like, oh, I have, like, he finds the stones, and he's like, oh, I can feel the pain, the war that's happening on other worlds, and I'm going to help them too. And so he goes throughout the entire universe and kills all of the sentient beings. And the end of that episode, the idea is he becomes so powerful that he transcends that universe's boundaries. The Watcher says that, and then Ultron's like, who said that? And he looks like he like looks off in the distance, like, you know, like the billion-yard stare, as it were, and he can see the Watcher, and he just he smashes through the, you know, the glass of the Watcher's area, and he's like, now I'm inside the Watcher's realm. And, you know, they have a fight, and Ultron's like, I can sense that there are other universes that I also need to cleanse. And so the butterfly effect in that sense, like, it was really cool to me, like, because Ultron was able to wipe out humanity in that one universe. He was able to get all of the stones. He got 5 of the stones and then killed Thanos. At least I think that's how it worked. It might have been just like a you know, just a small thing, like,
yeah,
oh,
kind of just an incidental.
like,
Oh yeah, and Thanos is dead too.
Yeah, I think it was like literally like Thanos showed up, like he had 5 of the 6 stones, and he just like used his laser vision to kill Thanos in like one. Like, really, that was Vision
Ultron
could have
OP.
done that with it. Vision could, like, but
Vision, you suck.
still,
Let's get
like,
Ultron back.
but still, like, you know, like that one thing, like, he was able to become powerful enough to kill humanity, and then he was, because of that led him to not only destroy everything in his universe, but it was such a big like timeline changing event that it changed the timeline of multiple billions of universes, because he was spreading like a virus through all of those universes that he was reaching. And the final episode is the Watcher being like, oh crap, I have to break my promise to never intervene, because if I don't intervene, all of the universes will be gone.
Interesting. That's pretty cool. I like that whole idea.
I'm sorry if I completely destroyed any any sense of mystery for that show for you, but
no, it's all good. Because like it's one of those things I usually give it like a year, and after a year, if I still haven't seen it, then spoilers are kind of just up for grabs, because at that point it's my own bad for not having watched it. So I definitely don't mind.
Has it been out? It definitely hasn't been out for a year, has it?
Yeah, I want to say 2020, but maybe it was 21. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, man, I guess it's 21. Let's see. Oops. Oh, Oh, August of, okay, so it's been like not even half a year, but still. Um still, I
I
mean,
just thought it was. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I thought it was. I just thought it was really good, and I thought it really tied into the story.
yeah, well, yeah, that like perfectly ties in exactly with what's going on here in Bioshock Infinite. Is that uh essentially a person gets like powerful enough or knowledgeable enough or just something enough that all of a sudden they realize that there are multiple universes where they can interact and change things. And again, like we were talking about earlier, butterfly effect to the nth degree. That's kind of what happens in here. So that is pretty cool. And I suppose that also
Cool.
kind of explains the whole false shepherd thing, because you are
Right.
Comstock, but you're like the false one, quote unquote.
Right. So, um, it's explained somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. That this technology that Comstock uh, had invented for him, he used to look at the possible futures of other timelines. It's similar in the way that Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone in Infinity War, and he's like, I predict that Booker will come and try to, end my regime, and so he does everything he can to alert the people of his city that, okay, you need to take him out before, like, so that those timelines don't happen in this universe.
Yeah.
And so the fact that blue Tesses take you to um the lighthouse, like, literally, um the like, they have gone into your universe again. Like, they're the ones who took your daughter to this universe, and they recognize afterwards that they've done a terrible thing. And so they're trying to reset the timeline, which I guess in the end happens because you're drowned in the river.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that they ask, okay, like, flip the coin, heads or tails. You get heads. There's like literally over 100 scratches that show that this attempt to rescue Elizabeth has happened more than a few dozen times. Like he's been brought into the universe, dies on his journey, and then they go back and ask the same guy. They walk back into his office and are like, "Hey, we need you to bring us the girl or wipe away the debt." Basically, like, in the storyline, people who who traverse across timelines have like this weird thing about their minds that it messes with them. And so after a few times, they can't just be like, "Hey, we need your help." They have to like do this weird manipulation thing of, bring us the girl or wipe away the debt, because like he thinks like he's still in this, like, essentially he gave away his daughter at the beginning because he was in terrible debt, and they pressured him, like, he's like, "Sell us your baby," basically. And then he felt really terrible about it and tried to stop them, and that's how she ended up having her finger severed.
Yeah.
And now he feels like, in a way, he's back at that point in his life. Like, he has a terrible debt, and he needs to, to save her, to get rid of it.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know if that makes you want to play the game, or if
It actually
I
does.
destroyed.
It's very intriguing, and it makes me like really interested in seeing exactly how everything plays out, because that's, like I said, like, the multiverse stuff and the time travel and all of that, like, it is very fascinating stuff. And it's like such a cool idea, like having that the main character and the main villain are both the same character, you know, like it's a really cool thing. And having, like, again, one of the things, obviously there's a few things that are kind of left unexplained, but like this game, this game's story seems like it's on a much larger scale than a lot of game stories, you know. I mean, you have a lot of stories that will be very very, like, you know, I guess I'm trying to think of exactly how to explain it, but I mean, it's like you have the story where it's like this thing happens and then this happens, and so, you know, you learn all these things and then you go forward. Like this game is, it goes, it gets very complicated, and it goes like basically progresses multiple times at the same time, like in different directions. And I mean, just the whole idea that it's like, okay, not only are you just going from point A to point B, but you're going like point A to C and then back to B and then back to A and then to C and then back to B. Like, you know, you're jumping all over the place in the timeline. It's a very neat idea. Not many games or movies or shows or anything are really able to do the time travel stuff. And I think the big thing is this does what a lot of, like, you know, I really like shows like Lost, for example, and a lot of those like really like big mystery type shows. I mean, you know, even like Game of Thrones had quite a few of those mysteries, but you know, something that a lot of those shows have like very, very, very rarely ever been able to actually successfully do is to tie up all of the loose ends. And Bioshock Infinite, like, seemed like it, you know, it gave you information on every character. It gave you, you know, like you actually understand who Elizabeth is, who Comstock is, who your own character is. You understand who the Lutesses are. You know, you understand like kind of what's going on, why you're here. It does a good job of setting up that mystery at the start, but then actually answering it by the end, instead of something like Lost. Again, I use Lost as an example, where it sets up all of these cool mysteries and all of these like really unique concepts, and like, who is this person, you know, why does the island do this, and then they basically just explain it with, oh, the island has sentience and is magic, and it's like, oh, but there were a lot of other really cool explanations that people had discovered. And, you know, talking about Lost is that's a whole different subject, because I love that show, but it did some really crummy things with its own story, mainly just for, you know, to subvert expectations. But this game, it's, I guess that's another thing. Sorry, I'm rambling a lot, but that's just another thing I wanted to say, is that this game does the subversion of expectations, but like in a good way, like in the right way, because I don't think when you started playing the game you had any idea that you were going to be related to Elizabeth, or that you were going to be Comstock, or even related to Comstock. It's a complete new thing.
I mean, I remember when I finished for the first time, it was probably at this point about 6 years ago, and I was like just sitting there, jaw on the floor, like, really, I was the villain the whole time.
There's no way I could have done that, right?
I was that like racist piece of crap who like enslaved everyone, and
surprise,
New York. I knew New York.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think you did. I mean, you know, again, I haven't played the game, so I don't know for sure. I do think I would like to play it at some point, though, because that sounded awesome. But I'd say as a listener, as someone who is listening to you explain the game, I think you did it justice. I think you explained it quite well, and you made it sound very, very fascinating.
Thank you. I think it is. So I think if that's what you think, then I think I did an okay job, at least.
Yeah.
My goal was.
Sorry, go on.
My goal was to make you want to play the game. Is all I had.
Nice. Yeah, I think you've done well on that. It's like, I really like you know, like RPGs, and like I like character customization in games and everything, but I, even though I don't play them super often, I am a huge fan of like really like story heavy and really good story games. Obviously I want them to have some level of gameplay that's actually like interesting. And it sounds like this game has pretty good gameplay, not like the best considering like the gunplay isn't as great, but like the Skyhook sounds cool and the Vigors sound cool. And just the way that the gameplay kind of progresses seems pretty neat. But like I really, you know, Outer Wilds is an example where like gameplay wise, like yeah, there is some stuff in there, but there's not a whole lot of like, I guess there are quite a few puzzles, but there's not a whole ton of like crazy, you know, big events that happen. There's not like, you know, oh, you have to jump across this chasm and shoot all these guys. It's like, no, Outer Wilds is a very, very story heavy game, and I absolutely love that. And so this seems like this would be another one of those things, and especially with all of those like big reveals and everything, it's like, oh, this is like really, really crazy. You know, Subnautica, well, I mean, Subnautica gameplay wise is also really fun, but that is one where like the story is something pretty crazy and pretty cool, and just the setting of it, and it's like that's almost a reason to play the game by itself, is just the whole setting of it. So Bioshock Infinite setting, again, pretty awesome.
Yeah, and after this, I do still need to play the first two.
Yeah, Bioshock 1 and 2, like I really want to play those someday, because those are some ones I hear people talk about a lot, like make references to and just talk about how great they were, and like not only have I never played anything from any of those, I've never like seen even what the gameplay looks like for any of the Bioshock games. Like I have genuinely no idea. I've seen a little bit of Bioshock Infinite, but never any of the other Bioshock games. So someday.
Someday.
Oh no, I've got the problem of like I have like 4 or 5 games that I really like, and I basically just rotate through all of those instead of like playing something new. I've had Hollow Knight installed on my computer for like 2 years now, and I still have yet to actually play it for the first time. And I'm like, every time, and I'm like, maybe I should try and play this. Then I'm like, nah, let's just play some more Terraria, or let's just go back to do some Dark Souls 3, just do my 83rd, you know, run through of the game.
Yeah, my wife and I have been playing nothing but Mario Kart for the last like 2 weeks.
Not much wrong with that, though. Mario Kart's a pretty fun game.
Definitely not.
Especially when you get hit with a blue shell, and then a red shell, and then another red shell, and then a green shell, and then someone drops a banana in front of you. My favorite part.
And then the lightning.
Yeah, the old first place to 12th place combo. It's my specialty.
Got a lot of practice with that, do you?
I can do it better than anyone else.
Well,
so yeah, I guess today's episode was very focused on the it still had some talk about the gameplay, but it was very focused on the story side of games, and that is a huge part of game design is story. Like without a good story, you know, puzzle games you don't really need to have much of a story for, but those games are also not ones that people are going to play for a whole ton. I mean, you know, you have games like Slay the Spire, which are fantastic. People will play that for hundreds of thousands of hours, but that's not exactly the norm to have a game be so good despite having barely any story. And even Slay the Spire does have a little bit of story, just more inferred stuff. But story is a huge, there's like the the supporting structures. It's, I don't know if you ever had this, Joe, there was the like 6 pillars of something back in elementary school, and it was like the 6 different behaviors that you should have to be a good person or whatever. I don't know, I thought of that as a comparison.
I don't recall, no.
I wish I could remember exactly what they were called.
Is it character counts?
It might have been character counts, yeah. And sometimes they like showed it as like a bunch of pillars, and they had like different ways to act as each of the pillars. But anyways, getting off topic, game design is like the structure on the top, and then like the pillars. You have like good story, you have like good mechanics, you have good engine, good graphics. All of those are like the different pillars that keep it up, and you don't need to have every pillar be as strong as humanly possible, but you want a lot of them to be pretty strong, and having a good story is like a huge benefit to a game, and a lot of times, enough to carry a game all on its own. There are a lot of games that people will play. I mean, you think of The Last of Us. That is a game which every time I hear people talk about the gameplay of The Last of Us, they say it is like abysmal, because the gameplay isn't what people are actually coming in for. The story is the part that everyone cares about, and that's why The Last of Us 2 ended up getting a lot of really lukewarm reviews, was because the story wasn't that good, but it kept the same gameplay, and so it's like, then there's not as much of a reason to play it. But if you have a really solid story, people will very easily, a lot of people, not everyone, but people will very easily look past a lot of these shortcomings in gameplay and in graphics, just because you have a really excellently crafted, really special product.
And so, I think Bioshock really, especially the third one, Bioshock Infinite, really delivered on that.
Yeah.
I can't say for the first two. I think people would say the second one isn't as good story-wise. And from what I've seen of the first one, it is as like it stays up to that standard of story. Oh, maybe nice. Even better in some people's minds, but it's like some people very angry. The story was like 2 notches down on Bioshock Infinite. It's like very upsetting, but yes. I think Bioshock Infinite was probably my very most favorite story-driven game I have ever played.
Nice. It's pretty high praise.
I will give it high praise. I will say that much until I play Bioshock 1 and see if it gets knocked out. But
yeah. Well, very nice. Yeah, that's good. Again, good story-driven games are like they're pretty hard to find really good ones, because you also kind of have to like the story. That's, I guess, one of the biggest issues with making a story-based game, is that the story has to be really well written. But I mean, I don't want to say it's not too hard to write a good story, but like you can write a pretty passable story to go with all the gameplay and everything. But it's just Bioshock Infinite just kind of took off with that and was like, you know what, let's just make a really good story. Well, that is pretty sweet, pretty cool.
That was definitely a podcast.
That was definitely a podcast. So, yeah, again, Bioshock Infinite. I've never played it, but after this, I kind of really want to play it, and I would suggest to you, the viewers at home, that you play it as well. It seems like it's a pretty awesome game, not just for being able to explore around in the crazy world that it has set up, but also to just experience an amazing story. So definitely check it out. And yeah.
And 2K Games, if you want to send me a check in the mail.
Yes, that was I forgot to mention that's the secret behind all of these podcast episodes. We've actually been getting sponsorships. We actually hate every one of these games, but got to get that money.
Okay. So if that was this week's episode, what are we planning for next week?
That's a good question. We have a lot of different options, so it might be another one of my episodes. I have a few options for what I'm going to talk about. These are just over the next however long, like some things I want to talk about. I do want to talk about Slay the Spire, and that one will be like the opposite of this, where this one was very story focused. Slay the Spire is completely mechanics focused. I'm not even going to mention the story. Subnautica is one I want to talk about, both for gameplay and story. I also want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV and its story, but that's not one that I can do in one podcast episode. That would be like each episode that I do of Final Fantasy XIV would be one expansion and its story, and I would probably still have to stick to just the main story and not even the side stories because there's a lot of them. So I'm not sure if I'll do that because that's a pretty hefty task, and there's a lot of story, a lot of really good story, like fantastic story in Final Fantasy XIV. Like that's for you, Bioshock Infinite is your big story driven game. Obviously Final Fantasy XIV isn't exactly story driven. It's that like it's not just about the story, but the story is such a huge part of it, and I think it's the absolute pinnacle of story in any game that I've played. So that would be a possible thing. And I mean there's a lot of other options.
Can I ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
Is Final Fantasy XIV the one with the car?
No, that one's 15.
Okay, I did not enjoy that very much. I tried it about an hour and I gave up.
Really? I've never really enjoyed Final Fantasy games until Final Fantasy XIV, and I've tried quite a few of them. But I think it's because gameplay-wise, Final Fantasy XIV is a lot like World of Warcraft, but like I'd say more fun. But like I think also just the setting is really good because I like it's got like the fantasy setting, but also with some tech stuff. They call it the Magitech, and so it's like it's a cool mix. But yeah, like Final Fantasy 15, everything about that, the gameplay, the like setting, everything, it just looked really not great. So, and I heard, I mean, there are people that are like diehard fans of it that love it, and then pretty much everyone else that says no, it was pretty bad.
All right, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna be talking about the Final Fantasy 14, you have your work cut out for you in terms of convincing me that it was a good game, because my only experience with Final Fantasy was pretty lackluster.
Yeah, it's before 14. My only experience was also very lackluster because I had played like 2 separate games, and both of them I ended up returning within an hour. I still remember, sorry, this is getting a little off topic, but I just wanted to bring this up because this is always funny to me. Way back when other Joe and I both had a Nintendo DS, and we were at like a GameStop looking for some game to be able to play. We were going to buy a new game to play together, and we had found Final Fantasy, like one of them. It was like 5 or 6 or so, I don't know. I know, actually it wouldn't have been that because 7 was like PlayStation 1 or 2, but either way, it was one of the Final Fantasies, and it said it had multiplayer, and so we were like, oh, okay, let's go ahead and buy this and get the, play the multiplayer. And we both sat there just working. What was that?
I'm just gonna go middle of the road, say it was Final Fantasy X. It's probably wrong, but
yeah, let's just say that. Yeah, probably. I don't know. But it was. We ended up getting like an hour in, just slogging through it, and we didn't understand what was going on. I mean, we were very young at the time, so we didn't really care for the story stuff. And we kept going, and it just. We got to this point, and we were like, okay, there's like no multiplayer going on here. What's going on? And I don't remember how, but we somehow either maybe we like had looked it up on the computer or something, because again, this was before we had like iPhones. We couldn't just Google it, but maybe we had looked it up online and found some forums, or maybe we just read the maybe like there was like the inside the case booklet explained some more or something, that the multiplayer was basically like you could send messages to each other. It was kind of like the Dark Souls, you can place messages on the ground and other people can read it, and like that was it. And I was like, why is this advertised multiplayer? And so we both returned it because we were like, this absolutely sucks. But Final Fantasy XIV, the story is fantastic and the gameplay is fantastic, so that's a possible subject. So also, it would be interesting to talk about, and this would be one that you and I could both kind of participate, Destiny 2. Kind of talk about that, and talk about like for you why you don't play Destiny 2, and for me why I like sometimes do but like most of the time don't, and like where some of the problems are, why it doesn't, like why that game it doesn't keep our attention as much as Destiny 1 did. So
it is a bit sad.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of memories tied in Destiny 1. As you might be able to find out if you check out the Destiny video that Joe and I did, episode 3 of the Definitely a Podcast.